right. Peter never failed to impress. Great show of friends here. Welcome to the Cyber Future Cyber Summit, CFF Australia part. Peter and I have collaborated for several years now, and we're probably waiting for this day to happen where you can actually beam in from Australia and have some of our friends and community leaders join here and share your thoughts with the global CFF community. Glad to have you all. Thank you for joining. I know it's early in the day. I've been getting used to my team in Australia at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock hour is when they get all our emails back to for the next day's cycle. Peter, great to have you, and along with the colleagues here. I hope you have a great discussion. We had a fantastic session from early 8 a.m. in the morning, so 8 hours of tremendous programming is all available for you. But this discussion is going to probably make a great end to a great day. So thank you, Peter, and welcome everyone.
Thanks, Val, and thanks for the opportunity to give myself and the panelists to talk to your very large audience all around the world. As you said, it's 8 a.m. here in Australia. I'm actually based in Sydney. I'd like to say we're about a month away from summer down here. I'd like to say we'll be shortly heading off to the beach, but unfortunately it's a grey, wet Sydney day, just under 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 on the Celsius scale. But nonetheless, it's fantastic to be here. I think as Val touched on, I've known Val for a number of years now, and it was in my role as a Chief Risk Officer at a medium-sized bank in Australia about probably 6 or 7 years ago. The concept of non-financial risks started to creep into my job description, and cybersecurity kept moving up the list a bit. And I thought I really need to understand a bit more about what cybersecurity is all about. And I had a sense it was one of those career-limiting moves if I didn't understand it, and of course a threat to the business and the customers. So meeting Val and the team earlier this year in Switzerland was just a great opportunity to hear what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere, Europe and North America. And hopefully through this session here, we can give your colleagues in the US and Europe some insights into what's happening in Australia. We'll have a short presentation from Darren Hopkins from McGrath-Nicol, which will set the scene a little bit, and then we'll go on to the panel. I'll introduce the panelists after Darren finishes talking. But just for me, setting the scene a little bit for those that aren't familiar with Australia, we have a long history of being a trading nation with originally Europe and then more recently in the last 100 years or so with Asia. Very strong entrepreneurial spirit down here. We've got businesses that have started in garages and backyards long before it became fashionable in Silicon Valley. And, the entrepreneurial nature of the country plus the trading links is a double-edged sword. It brings with it immense benefits, but also risks and threats, which I know we'll get into in the panel. With that, I'll hand over to Darren Hopkins. Darren's a partner in forensics at McGrath-Nicol, and has been one of the key people that I've dealt with for a number of years now, dealing with cyber threats in the businesses I've been involved in. I'll let Darren embellish his CV a little bit more, but over to you, Darren.
Thanks very much, Peter. I won't embellish my CV too much. I actually lead a forensic technology and cyber practice in Australia, so my viewpoint's got to come from an incident responder's perspective. I guess it was setting the scene. What have I seen go wrong? What actually happens in this country, and how are we targets? So I think it'd be interesting if we can have a look at some of those components and whether or not we are so much different to the rest of the world. Now, I am going to attempt to do the first thing, which is share some technology so we can get something up on the screen for everybody. And I will just get confirmation we can all see that, hopefully.
Val, I think we've got Darren's slides there.
You can just get confirmation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Off and running.
Good to see this.
Great. So if I have a quick look back in where I've come from to sort of come to this actual point. So I started my career in law enforcement, like some others on this panel have as well. and I was fortunate enough to start the computer crime unit for Queensland Police. So I'm from the northern states in Queensland, so I actually have blue sky and sunshine at the moment, as opposed to my southern counterparts. And it's 7 a.m. in the morning here, so I don't get as much light. But through that, I started in law enforcement, and then throughout my career have progressed on through professional services firms, including Big Four and now this firm. My last 12 months has literally been exclusively doing incident response on cyber activities. And part of what we wanted to do is actually have a look at what's really happening here and now in this country, what are we seeing, and I guess some insights into is what Australia facing any different to what the rest of the world does, and are there some elements of what happens to us that are different? One thing that we have that many other countries have also got in place is a mandatory notification regime, where if there is a cyber event that causes someone serious harm through the loss of personal information, we have an obligation to actually say something, and that obligation is in legislation, so we have to. And the difficult thing we have is we have to tell not only our privacy commissioner, so a government entity, what's happened, but we have to tell every affected person. And if anyone's dealt with an incident like this, you know identifying every affected person is the pretty tough thing. So that does mean that we've got more scrutiny on us as businesses and our government. And as part of that regime, there are statistics that are released every quarter, so we can sort of see what's actually happening in the country. And some of these statistics on the screen are the most recent ones that we've got. There's only 537 notifications in that last quarter that we're dealing with, and that seems like a very low number. Be very clear that you only have to notify if you believe someone has had an impact of serious harm. And what we've heard from the Privacy Commissioner and others in Australia is that they do believe that there's a lot of non-notification happening, especially in the smaller business areas where they may be not equipped enough to determine whether or not they have an obligation. One thing that we can see, just straight up from that first bottom left set of boxes, is that 64% of the attacks that have been being reported are malicious or cyber attacks. If I have a look at what I've dealt with, my stats indicate that 95% of the events that I deal with are based around organised crime groups and the like attacking Australian businesses. I still see human error and people making mistakes and accidents like that. I do see a little bit of system faults, and I'm actually doing a ransomware at the moment. We finished up at about 3 a.m. Our time this morning, trying to work through a ransomware attack that's unfolding as we speak. And we had spent some time trying to work out root cause. How did these attackers get in, and how do we contain and close that hole? And we think we've just identified someone forgot to patch an appliance, and unfortunately, that appliance is the VPN appliance that gets everyone the remote home capability, and it's a pretty severe vulnerability, as in we can leak everyone's username and password to the internet in about 3 seconds. So that's the few times that we see system fault coming through. And you can see from some of the other stats there, we've lost a lot of records. 4.1 billion in the scheme of things is actually quite small, but that's the recorded number of records that have been lost and that we're dealing with. And 65% of Australian businesses have recorded that been interrupted by a breach in the last 12 months. Now, that was a survey that came through last year. We're waiting on the updated results. That's a huge percentage of businesses that have been affected by this. And the last thing we want to show there is what are the sectors that are being impacted. Now, interestingly enough, for us, health takes the lead in targeted and attacked entities. Then, as you'd expect, finance is sort of coming through. Then we've got the legal, accounting, the professional services firms coming in at a third, and then education, and then personal services, and it moves from there. One thing I absolutely have seen in the last 3 months is a direct targeted attack on service providers. And that can be a managed service provider who does your IT. So attacking community has realized that sometimes the best way to identify rich targets is to break into the service providers that support them, and rather than getting one successful attack, you can possibly open yourself up to hundreds of targets, because anyone they support is then vulnerable. And that's just an emerging trend we're seeing. So the direct numbers, yep, it's costing the economy a lot of money to deal with these things. The interesting one there is that $276,000 is the average cost to an Australian business if they suffer a breach. Now, if you're an SME or a small business, in many cases, you cannot carry those types of costs easily, and you are relying on insurance and other things, if you have it, to support you. One thing that we've seen is in our stats, that number is actually higher. So in our internal stats indicate the average cost of a breach, and by cost I mean how much money did you lose, not how much did it cost to remediate and hire professionals to come in, is around the $450,000 mark. The largest fraud that we've actually dealt with to date has been $15 million. So $15 million lost in a single transaction. The second one was $10 million in a single transaction. Now, they're not ransom payments. They are actually funds that have been lost or transferred through a process, through one of these attacks. I won't comment too much on the ransom side of it, as in the payments piece. It's an interesting topic. But what we are seeing is that the 53% of the cost of dealing with these things is absolutely in the recovery and detection of these issues. So how do you remediate these things? And it's an interesting stat when you sort of are trying to determine whether or not you invest in cyber insurance. And over here, our insurance market is certainly evolving that product to try and meet that market. We do have a stat there, which I'll talk to in a second. Ransomware is currently our number one reported attack. And that's actually a change. On last year, if I'd been asked, what's the number one thing I'm dealing with, I would have turned around and said probably business email compromise. We're all sort of falling victim to have not put multi-factor onto our email accounts and losing that, and then being socially engineered and attacked through that. So if we have a look at that as an example, why are we falling victim to many of these attacks? There's a couple of things here, and we can possibly talk about this as a panel. One thing that Australians are known for, I guess, is our culture. If we're travellers in other countries, we bring that with us. We're pretty laid back, easygoing, and I would say we're a very trusting nation. That is absolutely used against us. I constantly support clients by doing education and awareness programs to help them with cyber. And we will do simulated phishing exercises just to give them an opportunity to see what a real life attack looks like, and to get a feel for what that organisation is doing and how they handle these attacks. And these stats align actually to my own findings. So within 4 minutes of receiving an email, an Australian is 30% of them are going to open it. So they're not going to actually just delete it, bin it, without a quick look. So 30% of the people that receive a phishing email are going to open it. And the really scary one just below there is 10% of the people who receive that are going to click on the link or the attachment. That's a way too high a stat. If 10% of the emails a scammer sends out to an Australian get clicked on, we are a very fertile ground to attack. And if you have a look at our users in general, and trust me, as a country, there is education out there. We are all trying to enforce and encourage people to do the right things. 63% of us still have rubbish passwords, and 58% of us still accidentally make mistakes and share things we couldn't. And I'm in IT. I have a technology team with me. These next ones kill me. The whole shadow IT piece is prevalent in Australia. As much as IT teams try to lock it down, we're not doing real good. And data leakage occurs all the time. And if you have a look at the last few stats there, how many days to detect and contain, it would be interesting to see how they align internationally. But 286 days to detect. It's coming down. I know that for a fact in Australia, but I'm actually seeing for some of these larger attacks that we are dealing with, where we're talking with large-scale ransomware attacks and the like, it's still many, many weeks and possibly months before the business knows that something's happened. And 80 days to contain damage tends to go off and suggest that our recovery processes are not where they should be. And I'll concur with that, because I deal with how do we recover often, and I just still don't see plans. I don't still see adequate disaster recovery, and I question that of our businesses. Now, I won't labour on this slide. This is some stats that have come through an insurance specialist. So they're talking about what's been published around the attacks that are notable for us in Australia. So, we have seen universities, Data3, that is a managed service provider. And as you run down the list, you can see government sites, and there's quite a few there. And I guess we could sort of talk to that when we sort of say who is doing this. We have had quite a lot of government attacks recently, and if you listen to the press and to our government's notices, they are quite clearly saying that these attacks are state-sponsored. So when I look at the who, I tend to think criminal activity, organised crime activity, and then a very, very small proportion of that might be state-sponsored. I've just finished our first quite large state-sponsored attack from a foreign state, and all I can say on the back of that is that they're very, very good, and it was an interesting one. So our experience, I said ransomware is what we got. We're actually almost terming a new phrase. It's less ransomware now, and it's almost extortionware. The attackers are very, very aware of how we try to counter and how we try to put new controls and processes in to become resilient to these attacks. And ransomware at the moment is more sophisticated, and what we are absolutely seeing is that the attackers realise that the thing that really hurts us and worries us is losing data. Is it then notifiable? And what's the level of reputational risk that sits around that? So in most cases, we sort of consider the 3 E's. First they exfiltrate, then they encrypt, and then they extort. And those 3 things are happening on every single one of my jobs. So there is time spent to identify high value information, and I'm watching attackers do searches, be in systems, look for HR folders, look for finance information. Then I'm seeing them stage it and then take it. And once they do that, they will then go back to you. And we've had more direct contact with attackers in the last 6 months than I've ever had, where they are absolutely having conversations with us. They are emailing our CEOs. And the words and the conversations are quite scary. They know what pushes our buttons. So I've had instances where a CEO has received an email from an attacker that says, look, we've taken your information. Here's copies of what we've taken. As you can see, this is your client information and this is your staff's information. And you can clearly see it's very sensitive. All we're asking you to do is pay some money so that this isn't released to the world, and then you cause more damage and more harm to those people. So you've got an opportunity to stop the harm, and all we're asking you to do is pay some money, which is covered by your insurance. That's the type of conversations we're seeing occur between organised crime and businesses in this country. And and finally, before we move on to our panel discussion, where does that go? So here's, interestingly enough, I'm monitoring this blog at the moment for a client who was dealing with Revel, the attackers, and that organised crime group have a blog that sits on the Darknet, and every day they release details of who they've attacked, and they put screenshots up of what they've taken. And if you'd like to purchase some stolen information, and this is generally from people who haven't paid a ransom, so there is still value beyond that, as you can see, go onto the site, the option opens up, you have a look at who the entity is and what they've done and how much they've taken, and you can start to bid on that information. And you put a deposit in, it's all paid in Bitcoin, starting price, let's see who gets it. Often we are seeing other organised crime groups are sometimes buying this information and misusing it for something else. So on that, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and hopefully go back to our presentation. We should have everyone back, I think.
Thanks, Darren. I think the technology worked very well. Look, fantastic presentation. I'm actually a little bit concerned. We're not going to get through many of the points you've raised in our time. I mean, I think just a couple of the points for me. I mean, extortionware is quite interesting that it's moved into a much more sophisticated marketplace effectively now. I think just highlighting the service providers as well, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk on that. Shadow IT is a perennial problem for everyone, as you touched on. And look, some of the statistics, again, I think it's worth dwelling on there, that the outdated statistic of 65% of businesses have been breached is quite an alarming statistic. And maybe just for those who want some currency conversion, 270,000 Australian dollars is about 180 odd thousand US, or about 160 odd thousand euros. And I think, as everyone would agree, that puts most small businesses actually out of business. So, the threat is, is there right up and down the business spectrum. Let's move on to the panel now. Darren and I have been introduced, so we won't cover again. I'll ask each of the panelists just to give a short overview of their background as we go around, and then we'll get into the panel. Jackie Nelson, CEO of Deco Secure, let me start with you.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here today. So thanks for that, Darren. That was a really great presentation. So I'm the CEO of Deco Secure. We're an Australian cybersecurity startup based here in Sydney. We work in the law enforcement and government space, and we certainly we're all about enabling organisations to get things done and looking at cybersecurity as the base and the core. So we build platforms that are secure by design, and hopefully try to help combat some of those statistics that Darren shared with us earlier.
I might head further south to Andrew Robinson now, and Andrew's come out of nearly 4 months of lockdown, including curfews in Melbourne, to deal with the COVID crisis down there, and they've gone from, I think it was about 700 cases a day at the start to, it's pretty well zero now, isn't it, Andrew? But you still haven't escaped your house by the looks of it.
That's right, but I've got a pretty significant perimeter around me, so I feel pretty safe where I am, luckily. So yes, hi everyone. I'm one of the founders and the head of cybersecurity at 6Clicks, a Melbourne-based technology company reinventing the world of cyber risk and compliance. My background is a mixture of government, including some work experience and service to our national authority on cybersecurity, which is the Australian Signals Directorate. Done a fair amount of work across state governments as well, including high security risk areas like courts, prisons, integrity bodies, and emergency services. But I've sort of combined that with cross-industry sector experience as well, working across legal services, financial services, healthcare, telecommunications, and a whole raft of different IT companies doing all kinds of different hosting and software development, where security is obviously important. My main driver is to get involved in things that are going to have the biggest possible positive impact on our cybersecurity as a nation and as a global business and citizenry community.
Thanks, Andrew. And then last but not least, one of the well-known financial crime figures, in a good sense, in Australia, and a good friend of mine, Steve York.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's nice to be here on a very grey Sydney day. There's the harbour. I've been 20 years in law enforcement, and then 20 years in financial services, in risk management. I've watched cyber grow from, like I think it was from the signals area in defence, and grow straight away very quickly, and it's been quite fascinating to look back at the growth of the industry. The last couple of months, and everybody's using technology to do everything, and it also brings vulnerability. I think people have to realise that. And I work at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia at the moment. We've seen about 20% increase in attacks and in financial crime over the past 12 months, and we believe it's particularly focused from the COVID situation.
Thanks, Steve. We've got a little bit of trouble with your sound. I don't know if you can maybe get a bit closer to the the speaker perhaps, or if we have some problems, we might get you to dial back in. Well, thanks for the introductions, everyone. Look, I want to sort of draw some of the themes Darren touched on, and maybe just start a little bit at the higher level, at a national level. And I think we're fortunate with Steve, Darren, and Andrew to have people who've worked on the government and the agencies side. I mean, I think as I touched on earlier, I mean, Australia is quite a mature, sophisticated, and open economy, and is part of the Five Eyes intelligence network. To my mind, there's a bit of a double-edged sword here, that we're part of the intelligence community. We obviously have, you know, very, very good insights into what's happening around the world, particularly with the state-based actors' activity. But yet at the same time, we are a prosperous, open economy. I mean, is it? Where do we land on balance? Are we better off or worse off? Would it be better if we had a lower risk profile? I mean, Andrew, I might start with you and then go to Steve.
Sure. Well, thanks for the question, Peter. I think it's definitely a tough one and a big one, but happy to go first and give it an answer. I'd start by saying, well, often historically, if we look at intelligence agencies and the craft of espionage, it's really cloaked in secrecy, and we haven't heard much about them and what they do. But we've seen a gradual opening up over the years, a combination of involuntary methods and voluntary ones. We've started seeing them step out of the shadows, as they say, and be a little bit more public. But by their very nature, they are secretive, and they need to be. So it's always a grey area, I guess. We see we don't see their victories, but sometimes we see when things go wrong. So it's hard for them to maintain a really strong positive reputation, but we definitely see them trying. But to get to your question, how are we situated? I think we're definitely more of a target being a prosperous nation. We have wealth that's an asset that criminals want to steal. We're educated and innovative, so cyber adversaries want to steal our intellectual property, attacks on university and industry, for example. And maybe even from a cyber warfare point of view, foreign militaries want to get a foothold in critical infrastructure, in the case things turn sour. So definitely there's a level of vulnerability there, but I remain hopeful and don't think that we're worse off because we're prosperous. I think that's a positive thing, but we're going to have to work hard to keep it that way, or we can expect a level of decline as we see interference and disruption in what we've become dependent on in terms of technology and our way of living now.
Steve, you've seen the evolution of the relationship between the government agencies and the private sector. And what's your perspectives?
Well, I think that in relation to this type of trying to set defence, there's two aspects. One is you're usually just behind the people trying to attack you. They're finding new ways, and they only have to find one entry point to get in. It's very difficult to defend. And the second part is that humans are involved. And what we've found in most red team attacks that I've seen, or exercises, especially in Queensland, Peter, you know this, Queensland is involved. They're very hospitable, and on one occasion they invited the red team into the building and gave them a cup of tea, a room to sit in while they waited for their alleged meeting. So these things happen, and that provides enormous vulnerabilities for organisations. So the human aspect, I can't emphasise enough, the housekeeping around the basics of security is essential, and the reminders to staff is an integral part to the overall defence.
Thanks, Steve. We're still having a bit of trouble with your sound breaking up. I don't know whether you can jump off Wi-Fi onto a mobile network, or maybe try try something different. Darren, just up to you again, just that evolution of the relationship between the agencies and the private sector. Again, I think it's come a long way, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. And if Steve gets back, I might just talk to him again a bit about some of the initiatives between the banks and the agencies.
Yeah, look, I've actually seen a change in the connectivity and support we are getting from government in the last couple of years. And as we were talking, generally about our government, our signals directorates, and our Australian cybersecurity centres are generally trying to look after the country, and therefore they're not really looking after us. My last 2 matters I've actually dealt with. The most recent one with a state-sponsored attack, it was actually our cybersecurity centre in Australia who actually alerted our client to the fact that they had an issue. Now, that's a step forward as opposed to us being responsible for our own detection. Our government had identified a risk and actually picked up the phone and spoke to multiple parties to say, you actually have an issue, you need to deal with this. And then went one step beyond that and said, and we will help you. And I was actually able to work, my team got to work with the threat hunting team for the Australian Cybersecurity Centre in trying to work through and understand what had occurred and actually help a business. And in some countries that would be unheard of. And more what we are seeing is our government stepping up and saying, we want to be part of the answer and we will support you. We will give you access to information. We will give you training. And if it's really important, and certainly if you're connected to government in any way, we will actually give you some proper support by way of people. And I've reached out to counterparts around the world, and they would love to have the access to those teams that fit within a government entity. Especially when we're talking about the types of skills and to be honest, access to systems, technology, and information that I would love to have. I do miss my policing days because I had access to information that was a little bit more interesting what I get now. But it's something I'm not seeing elsewhere. And I think that connection between businesses and the government in this country is unique.
It is becoming a good news story, isn't it? Andrew, maybe just, and Jackie as well, just maybe looking at Australia's cybersecurity strategy. I mean, there's been a lot of money and effort put in by the Prime Minister and Cabinet on Australia's cybersecurity strategy. Do you want to maybe just, I'll start with Andrew and then Jackie, maybe you can just summarise what you see on the ground a little bit out of this. Andrew, do you want to just summarise, what's in the strategy and what we've got ahead?
Sure. Well, the good news story around the 2020 strategy is that there's a significant improvement on and budget increase for cybersecurity investment from government based on or in addition to the 2016 strategy and nothing before that. That was the first one. So we're on to our second strategy, but it's going to last us a little while. So that budget will help us. It's generally, I see it as an expansion and substantial expansion, but of existing capabilities. So we'll see good investments like the joint cybersecurity centres that are distributed around Australia that work in concert with the Australian Cybersecurity Centre and industry, which Darren said is working well. We'll get more money. Australian Signals Directorates and their efforts will get an inordinate amount more money, which is beneficial to government. It's beneficial to critical infrastructure as well, which is probably the types of incidents that they most commonly get involved in. Where I think the missed opportunity is with the strategy is building stronger relationships with other types of businesses. So I'm not sure that there is really a significant investment on the innovation startup side of things. I think that might have been missed and could do with a greater focus into the future.
Yeah, Jackie, maybe just again your perspectives on the ground. I mean, you deal with different businesses every day. Do you get a sense that the support from the government, this sort of we're all in this together sort of approach is working?
Oh, absolutely, Peter. And, I'd just like to echo some of the sentiment, especially from Darren. I think this intersection between governments actually helping on the enterprise side, but also looking to some of the great innovations that we do have here in the startup sector on the supply side into government. Of course, Andrew, I agree with you. There's always more that can be done. But certainly from where I sit here, we're actually seeing a much greater conversation taking place between government and the startup sector. As Peter alluded to before, we are a country full of entrepreneurs. We're very innovative. Certainly, inside the cyber startup scene, I see some extraordinary Australian companies delivering really great solutions to the market, both from looking at a defensive posture, but then also looking at an enabling posture. We obviously work with law enforcement and government agencies here, and the thing that I find deeply, deeply encouraging is that they're not only thinking about the defensive posture, we're really starting to think about enabling technologies, about thinking, coming from a security first principle, but then allowing organisations to get their jobs done and build great efficiencies through those channels. So I certainly am very optimistic about what we see going on here in Australia, and I'm certainly feel very privileged to be at the forefront some of the technologies that are being delivered.
It's a really good point, and we might come to just more the technology and innovation side just a little bit later on. And I think maybe it's worth pointing out to everyone sort of listening that we've actually got with Andrew and Jackie here two startups that only have recently, well, Deco Secure is a little bit older, but part of that sort of vanguard of cybersecurity startups in Australia. Darren, let's turn to some of the incidents. People always like to hear the war stories, the horror stories, but there's always lessons to be learned. I mean, I think maybe I'll just kick off with the Toll Holdings couple of incidents earlier in the year, which is ransomware. And Toll, again, I think there's been quite a bit of publicity around this around the world anyway, so many will be familiar with this, but Toll is one of our major transport and logistics companies in Australia. It's owned by Japan Post, and it's again essentially part of our critical infrastructure. It moves goods, equipment, food parcels all around the country, and the business ground to a halt for an extended period after a major ransomware attack. Darren, do you want to just touch on maybe Toll first? And I know, Andrew, you're familiar with it as well, and then some of the themes from this year.
I always feel guilty about talking about Toll. I feel we beat them up so much over these things. Last week there was some new news saying that they're still 9 months in, mopping up from that event, and unfortunately for Toll, they're on their third failure since the first. So it wasn't just an attack that's taken this long. It was an attack, and then they got done again as they were trying to remediate, and then a third time, and alleged data taken and leaked, and it's worst case scenario. When I think about those issues, and I look at a lot of the other ones that we've dealt with, it's quite disheartening for our SMEs, because they will go out and look at these very large organisations in Australia who you would hope have the teams, the investment and the support to do this right, and see them fail so bad. And then what can we do about this, and is it even possible to protect ourselves, and do we even try mentality starts to come through in that. If I can say one thing that is consistent with every attack I've seen, is that we are not great at basic IT hygiene. I actually haven't done a breach yet, which my report didn't say, and if you had patched this, or if you had done that, or you had implemented this, it would not have happened, as in we could have stopped it. It does make writing a report easy. I've actually got all my findings in drop downs now, and I'd add them in at the end, but we just don't seem to be getting that. And Jackie, I know what you're doing is providing businesses services which already have the box ticked, and we just need more of that in this country.
I know in the fraud space, when I worked with Steve York, our favourite phrase was, "There's no new lessons to be learned here." It's a repeat of the same. Andrew, again, just your perspectives on what we've seen this year with some of the incidents.
Sure, yeah. So there has been a large number of incidents here in Australia, as there has been around the world. A combination of the highly capable foreign nation state-orientated attacks on government and critical infrastructure, and also really probably more prevalent across industry is the ransomware attacks by organised crime groups. And because there is a bit of a she'll be right mate attitude across the vast majority of businesses where security is not yet a priority, they succumb to those types of attacks. But Darren's right, good cyber hygiene is of paramount importance, and I'll just point out that you don't want to be the low-hanging fruit for attackers. So if you put in place that basic hygiene, you're really holding yourself in really good stead. There's not a lot that you need to do, I feel, in order to have a fairly strong posture that will protect your business or your organisations against a large array of attacks. And we can start by looking at the Australian Signals Directorate's Essential 8, which covers off multi-factor authentication, software updates and patches, application whitelisting and backups, for example, which I think would go a long way to mitigating the types of incidents that Darren's investigating. Maybe not the foreign nation state one, but hopefully, and at least the ransomware ones. The point around small businesses getting disenfranchised by looking at the big companies failing, I think we have to educate them that they're not the same. The big companies like Toll, they have a huge attack surface. They're doing business with lots of different systems and third parties. So I think the footprint that they hold is very, very different to most small businesses. So we need to encourage small businesses to not be disenfranchised and to look at simple solutions that work for them, that have security built in.
Jackie, over to you. I mean, maybe it's a good segue into how do small businesses put in place the basics? And I think maybe, again, just to give a bit of perspective to some of our global viewers, that a large company in Australia is still 1/10 or 1/20 the size of a large company in Europe or the US. And, I don't want to, be depressed about this, but it is that case of what hope do small businesses have where they may not even have an IT department or an IT department of 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that is a huge challenge today. Having access to complex IT structure, like you said, is out of reach for many businesses here in Australia. And so then it actually comes back to something that Andrew spoke about earlier. I mean, obviously looking at things like the Essential 8, I think this, obviously the cybersecurity strategy has elevated all of our awareness of the potential challenges. Organisations being able to access really important sort of guidelines such as the Essential 8 are a great place to start. But then obviously, without sort of talking specifically about Deco Secure, obviously our charter is all about security by design. So, as we know, one of the greatest risks, and Darren highlighted this extensively, was the risk of human error. We have to find the balance between technology and humans. When humans interface technology, there's always going to be errors. So I think the best thing that we can do as startups here and all around the world is start to think about building technologies that are secure by design. I know that's easy when you're a cybersecurity company. That's your philosophy and that's where you come from. But I think even other organisations that are building apps really have to start to think about how do we build security in at the core, because that is the only way that we're going to be able to truly overcome some of the challenges that we face. We after the fact, we've seen all too readily that after the fact is costly and expensive. We have to start reverse engineering and thinking about security at the core.
The secure by design observation again is a very telling one. Darren, you made the point earlier on about you come in at the back end and you see all the failings. How much a part is poor design as much as, again, the hygiene and hygiene sort of issues? Is there more fundamental issues about the way we think about the design of our IT systems and our business processes?
Look, there is. And Andrew, to your point, 100% of my breaches in 2 years would have been covered by the Essential 8. I've kept that going. And Jackie, you are completely right. The problem I see often is between the chair and the keyboard. So that hasn't changed at all my life being in technology. Fundamentally, where I've seen some issues with the concept of security and design is that we've got systems and businesses that have been going for quite some time, have started small, and Australians are all about starting small and building up and growing, and tend to not want to stop and redesign on the way through and readjust a business as they change. And as a result, I often see businesses that are operating a large organization on a structure that would have been fine, when they were half their size, and they don't go through that. And there has been a lack of support. In the last couple of years, if I wanted to try to get a good network infrastructure person or a cybersecurity expert or somebody to come and get assistance, it's actually hard. The resources are scarce. Some of the larger businesses have already taken them on, and as a result of that, it's quite expensive to get those good resources, and some businesses it's out of reach. Our universities have seen that, of course, and are trying to build new resources with our younger generation, but it's something that we see all the time. The job I'm doing right now, overnight, fundamentally, the whole network just needs to be scrapped and started again. And I talk to the IT people in this matter, and I say, well, why aren't we doing that? And I said, oh, look, we know that all of the problems exist, and we've patched and band-aided it, and we have a plan, and that plan will take 3 years, and we've got a budget that will take 3 years, and in 3 years' time we'll be fine. And that's sort of the attitude we're getting. We'll fix it. We know about the problem, but we'll take our time. And security, sometimes you can't.
Yeah, good observations, Darren. I might just, in the last 5 minutes or so before we wrap up with Val, maybe let's just finish off on a high note with technology. And one of the hats I have is on the board of the RegTech Association, which is 150 member strong association of startups in the regulatory and compliance space, which includes information and cybersecurity. I mean, Jackie, I'll give you a chance to plug what you see both in your business and broader around, the contribution that startups can make to making organisations more secure. And then, Steve, I see you're back. I'll let you talk about technology and some of the things you've seen as well.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Look, obviously, as Andrew knows, regulation and compliance are a huge part of the space that we're moving into. And our charter at Deco Secure really is very simple. It's back to that security by design, trying to remove the risk of human error. When we don't have to ask humans to think about securing things, when everything is inherently insecure, that obviously starts to remove a huge risk. The other thing that I think we see a lot here in Australia, and it's nice to see the market starting to move, is I think that we've seen people have understood some of the inherent technology risks, and so have used manual processes. Obviously, moving sensitive documents around on USBs, thumb drives, obviously that had its own set of risk profiles associated with it. But COVID certainly kind of accelerated us to the future. A lot of those workarounds became unsustainable. So we're starting to see organisations really think about moving legacy systems that were based around manual processes across to the digital environment, but what they are actually really starting to consider security first. So I think that's a really great place for us to be at. And yeah, the future's bright. I think there are a lot of great technology companies out there. I think we have a lot of resources at our fingertips now, and it's just a change in the way we think that's super important.
Thanks, Jackie. And I will give the RegTech Association a plug. We had a report come out yesterday, which was co-authored by BCG and the RegTech Association. Australia is the third largest market in terms of number of RegTech firms in the world after the US and the UK, and it's a fantastic achievement for such a small country. Steve, let's see if you can have the last word here. I think if you got your sound working, maybe just the perspectives on how larger companies, interact with small startups, and your observations on the startup scene in cybersecurity.
Yeah, as you know, Peter, I've been involved in the RegTech organisation for the last 3 years as well, and I've seen, just tremendous innovation. The problem with that is that with a bank the size of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, we've got so many legacy systems which are vulnerable, which also provide a barrier to startups. Getting a start with banks or organisations our size. And I think what we've got to do, and I've been trying to champion this, is to have areas of the bank where startups can really show what they're worth, and we've got to do that. You can just see by the growth of the challenger banks like Revolut and banks like that. They're making an impact, and Revolut is making an impact in Australia, and it's inevitable that we've got to move fast, and you've got to move with the new technology which is coming through. Of course, all that integration, I think, as Darren said or Andrew said, it provides gaps, and that's where we've got to be mindful about how it's being used. Just as I suppose as an aside, the reason was for my microphone being slow was that it's the start of working in the CBA, and everyone's jumped on RAS because we've got about 25,000 people working remotely right now, and that's provided. It's unbelievable to think we can have that sort of people being productive from all parts of Australia and overseas, and to have 25,000 online at any one time is a great success. But it does have its downsides, and my apologies.
No, that's all right. It's good to have you back, Steve. I think, again, I think there's lots of opportunities to work with larger institutions, but just the complexities, whether it's procurement or technology interfaces, or I know even just finding the right person in a large organisation is a bit of a challenge.
Yes,
Val, we might wrap up now. I think it's been a great discussion from my perspective, and it's been really good to hear from my colleagues on their perspectives in the market here. I did note Darren was talking about his password being rubbish. It's probably a cheap shot, but I'd suggest capital R and use some special characters. It might improve your rubbish password. And on that note, thank you very much, Darren, Jackie, Andrew, and Steve. Again, it's been a great discussion. And Val, hopefully you and your friends have learned a little bit more about Australia.
This is fantastic, and thank you so much, Peter, for bringing this great panel together. Darren, Jackie, Steve, Andrew, awesome job. I think the starting off with the small business was a home run, just because that is a big initiative that we're starting off after cyber capacity. Now we're going after making sure that the disproportionate or the disservice probably have done with the small business, not serving them well, and the commercial models being more targeted towards larger institutions, organizations, the supply chain and the third-party risk that we carry with small businesses not being addressed, I think is an essential element that will put all our efforts in. And great to see. In fact, I was very impressed with the collection of data and numbers itself is important, right? That's what drives action, and without data there is hardly any action. So great to see that. And Jackie talking about the DevSecOps in terms of securing by design. I think that is going to be one of the key elements as we continue to build very, very fast digital transformation. And Andrew got your point around how to address threat and what you're doing, and Peter has shared with us prior work that you have done together. And Steve, I wish we could hear a little bit more from you, but I think the two elements that you brought out together in terms of our protecting and the vast experience that you bring to this forum is exceptionally welcome. So thank you so much. This is a great panel to end the day with. For those who are listening in, this brings the end of our day one. Day two, we'll be starting with our friends. We'll start off with our CFF India friends, and then we'll continue to have a full day ahead tomorrow with cybersecurity, critical infrastructure. We'll have cyber capacity discussions all along the way. So thank you so much. You all have a great day, and enjoy the summer.
We'll see you again next year, Val.
Not that long. All right. Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right.